City Council meeting is called to order. Councilman Baroody will lead us in the invocation and then the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would please stand.
Okay, I'm going to give a little bit of a testimony before I give the invocation because it's kind of relevant to stuff. So it's just kind of interesting that in the last 5 days I went to 3 different churches. It's always nice to know that the same God is everywhere. But I go and end up at one church, and it's nice to find you're in the right place because it seems like the message written to you. And the passage they were preaching on, or began to, was Matthew 24:24. And it says, "For they shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect." And I don't know. At the time, it felt like it was pretty pertinent to what's going on. So if you just bow your heads and pray with me. Thank you, Lord, for being an always present God in every house, every place we go. Whether we invite you or not, you're always there with us. Thank you for being the leader of our world. Thank you for marking our steps as we go. And thank you for coming into this house, even though you may not be invited by all. And thank you for letting us know you're still there, always maneuvering everything to let us know that you're there and let us know what we're to be doing. Help us to understand and discern what's right and wrong. And please bless not just these proceedings, but bless our hands as we reach out to put our hands to the proceedings and the works of this city. In Jesus' name, amen. And I got Mario Garcia going to begin the pledge.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, now we have announcements of community interest, and these are not to relate to the agenda items, but letting us know about things happening in the community.
Thank you, Mayor. And I want to thank everybody for coming out on a cold night. And I think this is going to be colder than last night, so y'all stay warm going home. We have just one announcement tonight. We have the Holiday Lighted Parade this Saturday. So we encourage everybody to come downtown. We're going to start this thing about 6 o'clock. We'll actually be gathering our groups together from around 4 on. This is a great event every year. We have 85 floats this year. Just a lot of fun. If you need parking, it's over here in the parking lot. There should be plenty of room there. And there will be some streets blocked off downtown, but it shouldn't take too long, and I think it's definitely worth it. Definitely just encourage everybody to come down and have a good time. It's not supposed to be as cold as it is tonight. So
Yeah.
I think we'll have a good time, enjoy it.
All right, good. Thank you. Ms. Ackner, you have a
Yes,
note for
I
us?
would just like to say thank you to our police department and plug the Citizen Police Academy. I just graduated. They actually let me graduate, even though I took out Officer Treviso in building clearing exercise. But there were about 10 of us in this last class. There will be another class in February starting. It'll be on a Tuesday night, and it's a 12-week course. And it's fun, and you learn an awful lot. So I just would encourage people or encourage your neighbors.
All right, good. Okay.
Hold up before I got 2 announcements. One has to do with the parade. Trina's here. So there won't be any candy throwing. However, there will be a reindeer running alongside of the people dropping off candy, and he'll have a little elf with him. So just so you know. The reason I pointed out Trina is the elf will be her son. The reindeer will be me. And then the other announcement is one that I don't actually know if it's a question as much an announcement that everybody should notice that way. We have on, I guess in Peterson Plaza, we have some Christmas decorations. Not sure where they came from. I assume the menorah is going to go in this parking lot. But anyways, just thought I'd let you know. Thanks.
All right, okay. We have one more. I'd like for the K-Pub personnel to come up, please.
Oh, so you just keep. Okay.
A little bit more this way. Okay. This is a proclamation for the apprenticeship program that Kerrville Public Utility Board has done. Whereas the city of Kerrville recognizes a successful economic future demands flexible workforce training and credentials beyond secondary education that can be modified to accommodate changing economic and business needs. And whereas the city of Kerrville and surrounding communities have benefited from the apprenticeship program at Kerrville Public Utility Board. This program has been in place over a decade and provided training for 27 apprentice line workers. The graduates of this program play a key role in K-Pub's mission of providing safe, reliable, and cost-effective electric service to our community. And whereas registered apprenticeship programs lead to a highly skilled workforce for industries and employers by providing workers with versatility and recognized credentials, both statewide and nationally, which enhances economic strength and leads to a vital economic environment. And whereas individuals in registered apprenticeship programs, such as those at Kerrville Public Utility Board, can earn while they learn and receive educational opportunities through on-the-job learning and related bookwork instruction. And whereas the goal of observance is to highlight the collective effort among states, industries, employers, educators, community-based organizations, as well as local, state, and federal government to ensure continued leadership in developing an innovative and highly skilled workforce through apprenticeship. Now, therefore, I, Bill Blackburn, Mayor of the City of Kerrville, do proclaim the week of November 12 through 18, 2018 as National Apprenticeship Week. Now, I want to recognize some individuals. Tammy Riley, raise your hand if you would. She's manager of human resources at K-Pub, safety and training, and administrator of the K-Pub Lineman Apprenticeship Program. Larry Lee, general foreman of operations. And as I understand it, you were a part of the initial group of apprentices. All right. Tommy Goodman, lineman. All right. Tommy is a graduate of K-Pub's apprenticeship program. And Richie Clemens, second-year apprentice lineman. And then Andrew Stevens will soon be our newest apprentice at K-Pub. All right, this is a great program, great opportunity, and I'm gonna. You can give that to whoever. All right, I want to shake all of your hands. I get to serve on the K-Pub board, and this is just an exciting and very good program. All right. You gotta get them. All right.
We'll induct you into the program.
Yeah, good. I don't want to go out on the line tonight.
Tomorrow.
Congratulations, guys.
Thank you.
And ladies.
Good job. And Bill, if I may, I think some of these guys are also the ones responsible for putting up our Christmas tree
I
on
was
the
just
courthouse.
about to say, bless your
All
heart.
right.
So
Good.
thank you for that.
And the weather
Good,
that you had to
good.
do it in, too.
Okay. Now we come to the Citizens Forum. Remember, we will not take action on what is said. You can't, and the council can't respond to questions, and you do need to come to the podium. Now, let me say, after the last session of the city council, there were people that said we couldn't hear. This is not a great room for acoustics, and the city is going to work on that and make improvements. But they are doing all they can with the equipment. But one of the difficulties is people talking over other people. like when someone is at the podium and we got folks talking, conversation, so forth. Also, please don't just start talking in the council meeting. You're to be recognized if you're going to speak. Now, at this time, do we have any visitors for Citizen Forum?
John Brown.
My name is John Brown. I live at 205 River Hill Boulevard, and I just want to make some comments on River Hill Boulevard. I've got a picture here.
Mm-hmm.
There was a cost to the roundabouts on River Hill Boulevard. There was a cost to design, a cost to build, a cost to repair, a cost to remove, a cost to rebuild, and a cost to repair the new roundabouts. As somebody has already smashed into one of them, and that's going to cost somebody some money. You know, I just wonder when one day you're going to say to yourself, was this really a good idea? And is it really worth the cost? You know, I'll just pass that on to you. More pictures. This past Saturday morning, at little after 2 a.m., a guy's pickup truck left River Hill Boulevard, took out gas meter, electrical transformer, part of my watering system, and some amount of landscaping in my front yard. I want to give credit. The police department were on the scene immediately and took control of the street. The fire department showed up to make sure everybody was okay, but the ones that did all the work were at most to repair the gas leak, which if you walked in, when I walked in my front yard, I could hear the gas hissing out of the pipe. But they got that fixed. But then K-Pub spent 4 hours getting electricity restored. And it wasn't just my house, it was a number of neighbors. And I want to give them a pat on the back for the work that they did. I mean, we're really thankful to have those first responders around. But the point of this is that if in mayors and city councils past had not allowed River Hill Boulevard to turn into a state highway, we wouldn't have any of those expenses. And as I've said previously, you know, the city of Kerrville has got to pay for repaving River Hill, but you know, it's a state highway. You know, and the cost is got to be somewhat staggering. And I just wonder if there's take another look at this and see if we can find something that kind of resolves the problem, because clearly the roundabouts, they don't slow anybody down, they don't alleviate any traffic. I've spoken with the police department, and they got some spiffy new machine that will will count the number of cars, estimate their size, estimate their speed. And we have between 1,000 and 1,200 cars a day on River Hill Boulevard. That's not what I would define as a residential street. And I asked the city to try and provide us some relief. That's all I got.
Okay, all right. This has come up several times, and in regard to response, I think we need to refer this to staff and look for a report to come back to council. Anyone else for the consent agenda?
Linda Bullard.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My address is 916 Lazy Lane in Kerrville. I'm Linda Bullard. It really gives me no pleasure to feel obliged to take the floor this evening to say what I'm about to say, but I'd feel much worse if I didn't do it. I'm going to speak to the City Council's removal of Mr. Baroody last Thursday from his position as Mayor Pro Tem and the accompanying actions, and I'm going to read very fast because I have a lot to say. I'll give the benefit of the doubt and assume that Mayor Blackburn, Mrs. Eichner, and Mrs. Siegerman, who are responsible for this decision, considered that they were doing something in the interest of our town. So this is feedback just to let you know that many Kerrville citizens, like myself, consider what you have done not to be in our interest, and on the contrary, to be extremely harmful to our community, divisive, incorrect, and unethical. It is also very disappointing because when you campaigned for your office, you promised to bring our community together. But what you have done here is the exact opposite. It was not just a slapdown, a humiliation, and an attempt to silence Mr. Baroody. It is a slapdown and a disenfranchisement of the members of our community who put George in his seat. Is this how you achieve unity? By disempowering your colleagues who have a different approach? I'm not saying that council has no right to censure or reprimand one of its members if their conduct does not comply with the ethics policy. Obviously, you do. However, in this case, I believe that you fail to demonstrate that Mr. Baroody's actions did not comply with the ethics policy, that you had decided his guilt prior to a fair hearing, and that, in addition, you yourselves violated the ethics policy and the city charter in the process of censuring Mr. Baroody. Therefore, I would like to ask that in the interest of transparency and healing, you place on the agenda of the next City Council meeting or an upcoming one an examination of your own last action on Thursday to determine if it constituted a procedural and ethical violation. The public needs to know if what we witnessed was proper, in particular focusing on questions such as the following. Is it a violation of the ethics policy and procedure for some members of City Council to, in essence, conspire together prior to a City Council meeting and decide the outcome in secret, including, in this case, not only the charges against Mr. Baroody, but also his guilt? Did the city attorney provide advice to any City Council members on this matter? If so, what was his counsel? Was there any attempt to resolve this matter in a collegial fashion by asking Mr. Baroody about it directly, rather than taking this drastic and arbitrary action to censure him? Is it a violation of city rules or procedure and ethics policy for the mayor to call a special city council meeting and provide information about the subject under discussion to some city council members, but not to all, nor to the citizens, so that some are in dark while others knows what's going on? I'm asking that council revisit its hasty and improper decision last Thursday to strip Mr. Baroody of his role as Mayor Pro Tem and to recognize how divisive and hurtful that action was for our community, and to rescind or replace it with another decision which acknowledges the errors committed, restores his role, and does not seek to preemptively silence him. Essentially, I'm asking you to remove the reg, which was driven further into our community last Thursday. Thank you.
Thank you. One more speaker, all right.
Mario Garcia.
Roman Garcia. Oh, Mario.
Mario Garcia, 934 Pecan Street. The City Council, Mayor, you have been given a torch, and this torch, which is, I think, when you look at it and approach it, has a particular idea of where you're going to have to weigh what you think about it. This torch is what I think is the Kerrville Youth Advisory Council, and its predecessor name was the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council. And I think it's been kind of, in a sense, been abused by either, I don't know if it's you or if it's city staff. But some of the things that have happened recently are that I don't know if you're aware of this, but last spring they continually tried to present, and they're required 2 times a year to present to you guys, and they were never allowed to present. And they did all this work. From what I understand, there was a survey of youth here in Kerrville that took 4 months for them to come together, and you guys didn't get that. And of course, the name change and that sort of thing. And the reason for the name change wasn't the fact that they were just advising the mayor, was they wanted to represent the youth here in Kerrville. Some other things that have happened is that it's kind of got a slow start off this year. They just were appointed in September, and so they had their first meeting last month in October. The year before that, they were appointed in June, and so they were able to participate in a lot of things during the summer. They did the Guadalupe River cleanup, and so they were able, as a board, to participate in that. The year before that, the first year, they were appointed in August, so just kind of let you know it's kind of getting behind. There's some things about driving an Ingram truck. They did that for the last 2 years. I think they even decorated them, the Ingram truck, and that's a truck that actually was donated by Kerrville Fire Department to Ingram, and so they ride it. Now we're understanding that they're riding. Well, I don't even think they're riding in the Santa Claus truck. I think they're walking in it, and I think that's kind of in a sense like you're already putting them all the way to the back of the line, and then who's going to compete with Santa? Santa's everybody's going to look at Santa. Who's going to look at the youth? Their first meeting, I think, was the idea that one of those brought up. Remember, they can't create their agenda items that first meeting because there's no council members or members, and so it was already set up to have a meeting for the two. We could have 2 meetings a week. They wanted them to vote on that, even though that was already set up last spring. That was allowed and by you guys that had voted on that. There was another big thing is they've told to remove the visitors council form, the announcements, and future agenda items. I'm really happy with what I'm hearing from the youth council because they're wanting to actually bring members in to speak. They want community members to be there. They want even some of the youth to come and speak. They were talking about getting maybe the student council at the high school to come in and speak. And so they were also told to limit their meetings to an hour. And I think in a sense, they were told that the reason for it is because it's an informal committee. They're not a formal board. And I tried to look up what that was, and I've heard that it's an ad hoc kind of a committee. But ad hoc is only created when there's like actual projects that you want to get completed and they go away. So I'm going to ask you guys if that's what this actually is. Is this something they can have in the future? Mary, you're an ex officio member. You can participate in that, and that I thought it was interesting. If I were to line up some 2 and 4 year olds right here, I guarantee there's so many people here that want to jump and start talking to these kids because they have all kinds of creativity and ideas coming out of them. Well, I think if you go and talk to the youth council, I think you're going to find out that you're going to find even some better ideas coming out. The last thing I want to sit there and say is that I want them to be treated as adults. They're young adults. In fact, I'll bet some of them are already 18 years old. So in the eyes of the law, they're already adults. Mm-hmm. Some of them are 4 months, 5 months from being adults, and they'll be voting members of our society. All I'm asking is that you take the latches off of the staff members that feel the burden, because maybe they feel the burden because, Mayor, you're not participating in the meetings. Because from what I understand, the last 2 years, Mayor Bonnie White did, and she went to every meeting except for one. And I think that now that you're not, that they're going to do it because it is a burden on them. It's kind of like they have to babysit and watch them. So I'll finish it with this. I'm asking Mayor Blackburn, City Council, to ask that you choose to carry this torch as a beacon instead of a burden. And they also, that you use this torch to illuminate the path for these young youth and then show them the way. And ask that you be an example to the staff members so that they show that these kids what real leadership and guidance is. Please, and I thank you for your time. Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia.
Sorry,
Okay,
Mayor, there is one other speaker request.
Okay.
For Roman Garcia.
Oh, okay.
Good evening, City and Council. My name is Roman Garcia, and I'm the chair of the Kerrville Youth Advisory Committee. Before we start, we have some members of the committee that are here, so if y'all can go ahead and stand. Y'all can come on up here, too. We want to thank y'all for the opportunity that y'all have given us in order to serve on this committee. Again, we have here Grace Guerrero, who is the vice chair of the committee, Kasara Deng, who is the secretary, Blake Coe, he's a member of our subcommittee to look at projects and events, and then Katie Buchanan, who is also a member of one of the committees. So I'm here to give you basically an update of what the committee has been going on with. And at our second meeting, our most previous meeting, we discussed our interests and goals for the committee. And in order to meet the criteria of our mission, our purpose and our goals as stated in our bylaws. In there highlights 3 things: volunteerism, feedback to city council, and community participation. So in volunteerism, really we wanted to go for things that were beneficial to the underprivileged children, as we can relate into the youth. So, for example, the Angel Tree Project, Blue Santa program, which will be coming up, it provides gifts to underprivileged children during the holiday season. Habitat for Humanity, which we participated in last year, which is really involvement in the making of a home for a family. And we thought that was very interesting. We just got to paint it, but we got to see the family come in, and just to see them look at it, that really inspires us to continue to do more. And then another idea that came up was volunteering at Peterson Medical Center and the VA hospital, which we've done. We did the VA hospital last year. We've never done the Peterson Medical Center. We did the VA volunteering for the Valentine's Day. We handed out heart-shaped balloons and cards for them. And now to go into feedback for City Council, we did do a survey last year that hopefully we'll be getting to you this year, and re-looking at our mission statement that we had from last year in order to, maybe there were some changes that we want to make, so hopefully we'll get a presentation to you this year in order to really advise you on what the perspective of the youth is on that. In community participation, one member suggested that we look at promoting and educating the youth on organ donating, because it can be kind of a scary thing and very controversial whether it's good or not, and really it can save lives. And so we really wanted to show the pros and cons and better explain the youth, especially when we get driver's license. They ask us, do you want to be an organ donor or not? And so those kinds of things as we move on could be important. And our main thing this year is for us to participate in one big project, either the creation of one or one that's already created and that's currently an annual one. For example, we know something that Councilmember Vocal is actually pushing on doing is the music festival. I've talked with Councilmember Baroody about the Hispanic Heritage Day that he's trying to do. So those type of examples are something that we feel that we can really participate and get going. Also, for us to get going a youth center in the city, things like the bowling alley and things were taken away. So bringing back some kind of center for us to gather and have, those kind of gatherings for youth, either to reserve it or just for the city, and have kind of monthly events that would be something that we're interested in doing. And so as you know, we're getting on a slow start on this year, but we're really trying to get the ball rolling, and we would really appreciate the feedback from the community. So if you have any ideas, we do not currently have a Visitors and Citizens Forum on our agendas, but we will be pushing to get that there. So we do get your feedback, and if you have kids, young adults, nieces, nephews, grandchildren, please let them come to our meetings. Tell them what it is, let them research about it, and hopefully they can become involved in it and continue to let it grow and participate in it as it goes on. So I want to thank you for allowing us to be on the Kerrville Youth Advisory Council and to be the voice and to represent the youth. And our meetings are on the 2nd and 4th Thursdays of every month at 4:30 in the upstairs conference room. So if you take these stairs over to your right, you go to the top of the stairs, you take a left, and there's a door right there, and there's the conference room. So we really invite the community to come and participate and give feedback. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Roman.
Barbara Dewell.
Barbara Dewell, okay.
My name is Barbara Dewell. I live at 2919 Dry Hollow Drive. I won't take but a moment because what Ms. Bullard said it so beautifully and so completely, how I feel about what the action that was taken last Thursday at the special meeting. One of the things that I do want to particularly pull out of it that I was very concerned about was the fact that the City Council chose to eliminate Mr. Baroody from future discussion on a topic. And it just brought to mind that without proof of anything, without a true hearing on the issue, the City Council arbitrarily chose to remove an elected official from the ability to do his job. And I'm just wondering, what's the next issue that will come up that somebody won't get to talk about? We already have one City Council who has chosen I think rightly, to excuse himself from a topic of discussion in the TERS. And we need all of your voices, not just a few, not just a chosen few, all of them. We all elected you. So again, I'd just like to say ditto to everything that she said, and thank you very much.
Right. We now come to the consent agenda. I'm going to ask Ms. Brown to read this into the record.
All of the items for the consent agenda?
I'm going to ask to pull
There's
3C.
three of them.
The,
Okay.
the three, yeah, 3A, 3B, 3C, just the resolution themselves.
3A is resolution number 45-2018, canceling the regular meeting of the city council scheduled for December 25th, 2018. 3B is resolution number 46-2018, adopting the FEMA-approved Kerr County, Texas multi-jurisdiction hazard mitigation plan. And I believe Mr. Baroody said he was going to pull C.
Okay. I'm sorry.
So I'm asking to pull 3C.
3C.
And so I would make a motion that we pass 3A and 3B
All right.
as
You got a
presented.
motion to pass 3A, 3B. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Second. All in favor, the upraised hand. And it passes unanimously. Okay. Let's go to 3C now.
Sorry, hold on. 3C is resolution number 47-2018, representing that the city of Kerrville, Texas is capable of being designated as a management agency for wastewater collection and treatment within the city limits in accordance with federal law. Approval of this resolution is required prior to approval of the funding ordinances. That's it.
All right. Ms. Choppy.
Be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay.
Well, mostly I just want to know what it is that we're doing. It says it's tied to the loan, and I guess I just wanted to know. I couldn't find how that locked in. So, what's the need that we're dealing with here?
Yes, sir. As explained in the agenda bill, essentially the designated management agency is pertinent to the Texas Water Development Board funding. It is essentially a bureaucratic checkbox that's required by TCEQ. We are not within one of the zones that's mandated by TCEQ. However, in order to receive that funding and be eligible for that funding, the city of Kerrville does have to establish itself as a designated management agency should this area ever become into one of those required zones by TCEQ.
So, because part of what I was wondering about is it says to show that we're capable of being one. Are we actually being designated as one, or are we just saying that we're capable?
We are capable.
So we're not changing anything, just saying that we're capable, right?
That's correct. It's saying we have the wherewithal and capability. Should it come forward in the future, we would be the entity that they would look to.
Okay, so as of right now, and it says it in the agenda bill, there's no binding duties or anything that's tied to this. All we're doing is saying, hey, we're eligible, move on, right?
Yes, sir. That's
Okay.
correct.
All right. I'm good with that. I would move that we pass it as presented.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we've got, yeah, okay. Mr. Vogel, second. 3C, resolution number 47, 2018. If you are in favor of that, raise your hand. And it passes unanimously. Okay. Let's go then to the ordinances, first reading. And Amy, are you here to give us some explanation on 4A?
Yes, sir. I'm going to introduce both 4A and 4B. All right. So we are looking at two separate ordinances. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Ordinance number 2018-34, authorizing the issuance, sale, and delivery of $8 million in aggregate principal amount of City of Kerrville, Texas combination tax and surplus revenue certificates of obligation, Series 2018B, to be purchased by the Texas Water Development Board, securing the payment thereof by authorizing the levy of an annual ad valorem tax and a pledge of certain surplus revenues from the city's waterworks and sewer system, and approving and authorizing the execution of a paying agent, registrar agreement, an escrow agreement, and all other instruments and procedures related thereto.
All right. Thank you. My mistake for not calling on you. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So tonight we are going to be doing a presentation that covers both of the ordinances, but we're going to vote on them separately. So you can read the second ordinance before the second vote. Does that work? Okay. Okay.
Yes, very good. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay, so these are ordinances regarding the authorization to issue certificates of obligation. And up on the screens, I have a project and funding calendar that you've seen before, just showing you that, you know, we've been talking about these things for a while, and y'all have taken action on them several times, and now we're getting close to the end. So tonight is actually the ordinance to authorize the issuance of the debt. We have information about what interest rate we were able to secure and some specifics on the financing and debt service. So with us tonight, we have Tom Spurgeon, who's our bond counsel, and we also have Gabriella Brasinio from Hilltop Securities, and she's going to give a presentation that is a transaction summary, and it will actually go into debt service and rates and that kind of thing.
Hi, good evening. I believe the presentation's going to be up there. So, historically, the city has utilized either competitive or negotiated sale methods to issue debt. This time, we've gone to the Texas Water Development Board to utilize some of their funding. They were created in 1957 in response to historical drought, and since then have helped cities and counties throughout the state with over $25 billion in funding with grants, federal and statewide. So your programs that you're using are the Clean Water and the Drinking Water Revolving Fund, and they use both federal and state grants to purchase the obligations that you're paying back. And so the Water Board prefers to, instead of doing a direct loan, they have the city issue a direct obligation that they will purchase. So they're purchasing the entire loan, but it's an obligation instead of just a loan. So you'll see on page 4, the very far left column has the rates that you would have received if you'd gone to the market doing competitive or negotiated sale. But because you're able to go through the Water Board, they're able to subsidize the rates that you would use in the market by, for your clean water, it was 1.3%, and for the drinking water is 1.35%, which is pretty significant. If you go to the next page, page 6, this is for the 2018 A bonds. This is the clean water, so they were able to get a 1.3% subsidy. So it shows your all-in true interest cost is 2.29%. If you'd gone to market, it would have been about 3.6%, which is a lot higher. I did a comparison, and for both issues, you're saving a little over $3 million in interest by going through the Water Board. So if you go to the next page, it shows you the debt service on the 2018 B certificates. Again, you were able to get a subsidy, so your actual true interest rate is 2.25%, which in this interest rate environment, it's very, very good. Page 9 shows the debt service on 2018A, 2018B, and then the current outstanding debt that you have. Page 10 has the debt service on these two issues. And page 11 has the revenues that you use to pay for the debt service with your outstanding debt service, your additional debt service, and there's a coverage ratio that shows you have more than enough revenues to cover the debt service. Page 12 has your aggregate debt service pro forma, so it shows that you guys are in a good position in the back end of your debt service, so that if there's issues later that you want to issue more debt, you have a capacity to do that. On page 14, this is a chart showing what the Fed funds rate are doing right now. As you can see, from 2008 to 2015, rates were historically low. They didn't change at all. And starting in 2015, they slowly have been increasing the rates. This year, we've already had 3 increases, and we're planning to have another one in December. And they've forecasted they're going to do another 3 increases in 2019. So from January to now, rates have increased over 80 basis points. If you were to have issued between now and then, and going forward, it's just going to continue to widen, is what they're projecting. So in December, it'll probably be another 25 basis points, which would mean if you were to issue anytime between December and the spring, it would be additional 25 basis points from now. And this is just another showing you the chart of how it's increased just from January till now. On page 19, we would recommend that the City Council consider authorizing the Series 2018 bond transaction. There is no way that you could have achieved this kind of interest rate in the market, and it's a great opportunity at this time to take advantage and lock in these rates, because we don't know what's going to happen in the future. I mean, all indications are that it's just going to increase, and the cost of borrowing will continue to increase. So we have a little example here that if the basis points were to increase by 20, that would increase your debt service like 10% just by 20 basis points. And we already know it's going to become more than that in the next 6 months. So we really appreciate the opportunity to work with you guys, and thank you. Do you have any questions?
Thank you. Any questions, council?
Yeah, I got a few.
Okay.
First one is about the rates. So yeah, I get that they're real low and nobody's going to argue with that. If the rates that are presented to us today, do these get locked in, or is there anything weird like that as part of it? Like, is there a time?
Does it change over time? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, yes.
No, it doesn't. So the rates that you're locking in, this is the rates that they are. They don't change unless you refund the bonds.
Okay, but if we, where I'm going with it is, we have this ability to choose to do something like this in 2 ordinances or 1, 2 readings or 1. We're choosing to do it in 1, which is just the way we're choosing it. Had we done something like that where it was 2 readings, essentially 2 weeks apart, would you have been able to give us a rate the first reading that would have held up for the second reading? Or does it not work that way? And if so, could we have done it in a second reading, just get the rates then?
So the water board actually they have a process where there's certain days that they'll give you rates.
Mm-hmm.
So for our closing date, these are the rates you're given. I don't know if it would have changed if you'd waited 2 weeks. It might have, and I can't speak to that.
Fair enough. And then we talk about these rates, but in the past when we talked about this, going through the water board, we actually have a higher level of fees. Don't worry, that clock's against me, not you.
Okay.
So, higher amount of fees. So there's some some loan fees that are pretty high for this loan. What is it for these 2 different ones? Do you know?
So there's a loan origination fee that is done for the loan for going through the water board. Essentially, like if you went through doing a competitive or negotiated deal, you'd have to pay underwriting costs.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like their cost of doing the loan. But that isn't the change. I don't believe that's a change in the increase. I think they've added some project costs.
We got a number thrown at us about $500,000.
I think that's something separate. That has to do with
$137.5 is what it is.
that has to do with the project costs.
Right. Yeah, just to address your question, so there are some fees, like the origination fee that Gabriella was just speaking of, and that may be a little bit different than if we were going on the open market, but not significantly different. There are some additional requirements with the Texas Water Development Board loan, one of them being like additional environmental reviews and compliance with the American Steel Act, and compliance with the Davis-Bacon labor law, or labor wage, fair wage act. And so we've estimated what we think the impact of those may be, and that's the $500,000 number that you're thinking of. But that offsets the $3 million savings that that Gabriella was speaking of. So we still come out over $2 million ahead.
Right. I'm not questioning that. I just want to make sure we're talking apples to apples when we talk about it. And then the COs themselves. So I'm going to probably throw a couple of questions in here at the same time because they're kind of related.
Okay.
But these are backed by primarily ad valorem. We're going to choose to make them backed by surplus revenue, right? That's basically.
So. Yes, so they have an ad valorem tax back. Like if something were to happen, you could use taxes to pay for that. But your intention is to use utility.
When we report this debt, is it going to be reported as property tax backed or no?
Are you saying to who are you reporting this to? Like,
well, when we go our overall city debt picture, and we show things that are ad valorem based, and I forget what the other one that they put in there, but is this going to show up against? To us, council asked the question: are we going to see this as ad valorem based, or
so
no?
Typically, when we show the debt service, I'm not sure how the city handles it, but we'll show a breakdown of where it's being paid from to. So it'll be like, yes, it'll be in your GO debt, but then it'll show that you're using part of that is being paid with revenues. So like when we go to rating agencies, when you go to a rating agency later to issue debt, it will not count against that.
So historically, it'll show that we're paying out of revenues, but looking forward, we have to put it down as something that we're covering by ad valorem. Is that not correct?
Backup.
Yeah. Essentially.
I'm Tom Spurgeon with McCall Parkinson Horton. With the debt that you're issuing here is it's essentially self-supporting debt. What Gabby I think was alluding to is that rating agencies recognize that this is a debt that, even though it's ad valorem tax supported, and if you were in the public market, that's particularly important because you get the absolute lowest rate you can, because you literally are saying that you would pay tax, or that you would levy taxes if you had to. But you have
Go ahead.
But you have sufficient revenues to make this self-supporting debt. So from a rating agency standpoint, they will not treat this as being essentially against your tax base, because you're going to be paying it from another source of revenues.
Okay. Mr. Rudy, you have another question?
I did. I don't know if you guys want me to do it here or just. It ties to both of them, so if I could throw it in here.
Go ahead.
Okay. So basically, this one has to do. We always get told COs. One is a question. I don't think it's to you, but the question is the amount. We were told in the past that the TTHM was going to be like, it was like Christmas time. We were told like 4.1 million. We were told Legion Lift Station is 8.5, so 12.6. I guess that things went up, yes, but we're going to fund these two projects with a total of 15 million. So the question will be asked to staff, I guess, what happened there. But to you, COs, we always get told that the surplus money, so if we borrow more than we end up using on the project, that we can use it on any project in the water family, if you will. But specifically, when I'm reading it seems to say that surplus funds go into the construction fund, and then if they aren't used out of construction fund, they go into the sinking fund, which essentially is to pay back this loan. So how do we get it to a future thing? How do we do that?
Particularly if this is with the Water Development Board, to the extent that you have any surplus money left over from funding these projects, you can go to the board and ask for permission to use it for another project. And if they choose to do so, you'll be able to put it to some other use in your utility system.
Right.
To the extent that they would say no, there's a requirement that you pay down debt in inverse order of maturity. So you're
Right.
essentially going to be redeeming the debt. So you don't, and that's somewhat similar if you were, if you had excess money from a financing that was not going through the Water Development Board, to the extent you had money left over, you would be able to apply it to another purpose as long as it fit the purpose for which those bonds or COs
Right,
were issued.
but because it's the water board, you're saying there's
You have to go to them.
we have to actually get permission from them in the future.
Yes, you do. Correct.
Okay,
That's
so,
right.
all
Yes, you do.
Okay. All right. Any other questions on 4A?
Well, can I get an answer from staff or whatever on
Oh,
the difference in
okay.
number?
Staff have an answer going from 4 million in Christmas to now where we are?
Yes, so some of the numbers that you've seen before, 4.1 million for TTHM, 9.85 for Legion Lift, 2 million of Legion Lift is being paid for with the, from EIC, donation from them. So 7.85 is a number that you've seen as far as the Texas Water Development Board loan amount. We're going forward with the full 8 million and 5 million that we applied for a couple of different reasons. As you know, we don't have any bids yet on any of these projects. We have seen some significant increases in labor costs and steel costs because of tariffs in other cities doing bids. So there's a possibility that we could need the entire amount for these two projects. And then we did specifically talk to the Texas Water Development Board about what if we don't use all the money for these projects, what happens? And they were clear that it's about, it's a couple of month process. They would have to approve the project, but certainly they are open to approving another project as long as it is in the, the Legion lift station has to be on the water reclamation side of things, and the TTHM money has to go on the drinking water side of things. Our Public Works Department has a list of lots of projects that would qualify for either one of those categories. So looking at the rising rate environment that we're in, we think that it's wise, and the financial advisor recommends this as well, to go ahead and borrow at these very favorable rates in case the projects end up costing this much, and then if they don't, because we know that we'll be able to apply this money towards other projects. Do you have anything to add?
Okay, just real quickly, and I just would have liked us to go to EIC and ask for more instead of going to water, because EIC's cash is, of course, free, and this costs us admittedly a cheap percent, but it's something. Anyways, that's all.
Okay.
I just want to say, yesterday, Amy spent about 45 minutes with me going over the 46 pages, more information about the Texas Water Development Board, which is a very interesting board. They have about $4 billion worth of funds to do nothing but help the state of Texas and all the cities have reclamation ponds or lines, or to just do all sorts of things. So it's just, thank you so much for that education, because a lot of what we were talking about, and one of the things on the $5 million, don't forget we get to reclaim our engineering costs, I believe, or ask for reimbursement.
That's actually on the Legion lift side,
Oh,
so
is it
on
on
the
the
$8
Legion?
million
Okay.
one.
Okay.
But that is a good point. The way that loan is, or that certificate of obligation is structured, we can use it to pay for engineering costs that we've already incurred on the project, so we can be reimbursed for
Which
this.
I thought was really a great plus. So thank you very much.
Now, I must say, I'm maybe one of the few people in this room that remembers the 7-year drought of Texas that created in 1957 the Texas Water Development Board. But anyway, all right. Do we have other questions or observations on 4A?
It was a great year, by the way, 1957. Just saying.
All right. All in favor of 4A, ordinance number 2018-34, if you'd let it be known by the raised hand.
Mayor, I need a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance 2018-34.
We have a second.
I second.
We got a motion second. I'm sorry, I get ahead of myself. All right, we have a motion second. All those in favor, if you let it be known by the raised hand. It carries unanimously. Now, let's look at 4B, and if you will read that for us, Ms. Brown.
Ordinance number 2018-35, authorizing the issuance, sale, and delivery of $5 million in aggregate principal amount of City of Kerrville, Texas combination tax and surplus revenue certificates of obligation, Series 2018A, to be purchased by the Texas Water Development Board, securing the payment thereof by authorizing the levy of an annual ad valorem tax and a pledge of certain surplus revenues of the city's waterworks and sewer system, and approving and authorizing the execution of a paying agent, registrar agreement, and an escrow agreement, and all other instruments and procedures related thereto.
All right. I am going to, at this point, go from the left and see if councilpersons have any comments or questions. Ms. Siegerman.
No, I've got all my questions answered here this evening and yesterday morning, so I've got a lot of information already.
All right.
I too, I have no questions.
Okay. No questions here?
No, I've already asked for the public.
Okay.
We're good.
All right. All in favor of 4B
I'll make
ordinance?
a motion.
Need a motion.
I'll make a motion that we pass 2018-35 on, well, period.
Sorry, I'm going to write myself a note.
And I'll second that
Okay,
motion.
we got a second as well. All in favor of 4B ordinance number 2018-35? All right, carries unanimously. Okay, we come to second reading, 5A. Ms. Brown, would you read that for us?
Ordinance number 2018-32, amending Chapter 2, Administration, Article 4, Boards and Commissions of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Kerrville, Texas, by adding a new section 2-91 to create a Senior Services Advisory Committee, providing the functions of said committee, containing a cumulative clause, containing a savings and severability clause, and providing other matters relating to this subject.
All right. Okay. I'm going to begin this time with Councilman Vogel. Any questions or?
I guess under section B1, is it board for the city manager and the city council, or just are you aware of that? I didn't know. Are they supposed to report to you and council, or just the council?
I think it reports to me. I think it gives advice on senior programming.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And this does include the things suggested at the first reading. Mr. Baroody?
That was actually my question, but it wasn't so much about the reporting. Because is this board going to have some sort of administrative function to it, or is it just advisory like the library recovery and
It really is advisory. Yeah.
Right, so it seems like it should be like those, and it just should advise. I see it as acting as like a think tank to the policy setters, which is us. So I would think that would make more sense to be like those other ones and be just a council and
It
the.
says advisory body.
Yeah, it's advisory, and it's a committee, not a board.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, okay. Okay, Ms. Agnew?
I understood it to be an advisory board, and I think it's a good idea.
I think it's a great idea. I was going to suggest, I don't know about the owners of Kerr Connect, they were looking for volunteers. I was just going to throw that name out. People who are in touch with senior citizens.
Right.
As well as some of the nurses that I've gotten to know over the years that work with that community. Might have just an idea. I don't know
Sure.
who the owners of Kerr Connect is, but I saw them at one of the.
Well, it's a nonprofit, and they've done a lot of work to get where they are in terms of providing transportation. Yeah. All right. Now, this time, do I have a motion for the Senior Services Advisory Committee?
I move that we accept ordinance number 2018-32.
Okay. We have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, if you let it be known by the raised hand. Okay, and it carries unanimously. Okay, 6A, if you'd read that for us.
To authorize execution of a construction contract for the water treatment plant clarifier rehab with Keystone Construction in the amount of $796,000.
All right. Ms. Hoppy?
Mayor and Council, as you may recall, this overall project was split this summer into two components. Essentially, we ordered the equipment over the summer because we knew it would be a 6 to 8 month lead time, and so we have now come to the point where we're ready to go ahead and hire a general contractor to install that equipment, as well as do the electrical work and the general construction work at the clarifier project. This will require some downtime, and so for the plant during the springtime, which is really the winter going into the spring, and so this is the optimal time for us strategically for the operation of the plant to have that downtime, and so that's why we've timed the project in the way that we have. We did receive a bid that was overall for the project to be it was under the engineer's estimate, as well as the overall project being under the budgeted amount. So we are ready to proceed if you are.
Okay. All right. I'm going to start this time with Councilman Vogel. Any questions or comments?
No, sir.
Mr. Baroody?
No, I would just move that we move forward and execute.
All right. Anything else? Okay.
I'm good.
Mr. Baroody's made a motion that we proceed. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we've got a second. Ms. Eichner. All in favor of 6A, raise the hand. Okay. And it carries unanimously. Okay. 6B, Ms. Brown, would you read that for us?
Interlocal contract with South Central Planning and Development Commission for development services software.
All right. Mr. Paxton, tell us about it.
Development Services has been looking for new permitting software for some time. The current software is quite limited on its support, as Tyler Technologies is phasing out of Encode 8 and Encode 9, moving into a different software called Intergov. We've looked at 6 different products. My Permit Now, or My Government Online, is offered by South Central Planning and Development Commission, which is a council of governments in Louisiana. They use this for their internal workings and have partnered with over 100 other communities across the country. It does offer modules for our building permitting, planning and zoning, environmental health, and code enforcement. Other key features are the e-portal for the customer access online, inspection scheduling, electronic plan submissions, plan review tracking for our customers, a mobile app for both staff and customers, improved reporting options, and unlimited number of users, both internal and external. Through our development stakeholders group, one of the key factors that they've asked for from our department is access to our process, to the information online, both plan review, permitting, health department, and code enforcement. And again, this does have a robust online e-portal. The software itself kind of serves as a one-point contact for the entire department. Staff actually visited both San Marcos and the city of Leander, who have been using this software for about 6 years and 4 years respectively. The only complaints that they've had is some of their processing through their end of it, as far as processing refunds for missed charges and that sort. But they've been using it for quite some time with no complaints. That is the implementation process. There is no fee for that. We don't start paying until we actually go live with the software. So as we customize to our own forms and process, there's no fee throughout that process, and they do offer a levelized billing throughout the year. For average year, we're expecting about a little over $41,000 for the software. It is cloud-based, and we're looking anywhere between 3 to 9 months for implementation for all of the modules. With that, I'd be pleased to answer any questions.
I would just like to know how user-friendly, what's the feedback you've gotten from the employees when they've had the pleasure of learning about it, and it's been positive?
Right, yes, it has. Both our employees, we've done several demos with the company to show the different modules and how those work. Again, talking to other cities, their customers have been very satisfied with it. Very little complaints, and again, the improved access that we're offering has gotten tremendous support from our own customers.
It's a welcome gift.
I would just like to commend you for the development stakeholders group. What do you call it?
Development stakeholders group.
Okay. In 34 years I've been here, I've heard so many complaints about permits are supposed to be ready and you got your crew out there ready and the permit's not there, or this changes, that changes, and all kinds of things. But I'm hearing good reports from builders saying, with the chance to sit down with you and some others and staff and look at the whole process, that it sounds like you're making real progress. And this is another way to do it, both from what I understand, the internal help, but that external accessibility of the customer, being able, for instance, to look up, see where the permit process is and that kind of thing.
Yes. Thank you.
That would be exceptional.
The other companies that the cities that you mentioned have used this, have they done surveys with their customers as far as the ease of accessibility, or from the outside in?
I'm not sure about that. I know San Marcos said since they've been on it about 6 years, their daily traffic in the office is 2 to 3 people, both contractors and citizens. Most of them have, once they've accessed it online, have had no issues.
Okay.
So I think that's may not speak to the ease of it, but definitely the accessibility has made a tremendous impact on their workload.
Okay. Well, it's badly needed. So.
Okay. Do we have any other questions?
I've got one. Oh, go ahead. Okay. Ultimately, this is a change from what you guys recommended a few months back, right? So as far as you guys had presented council like 3 options or something, and this isn't one of those 3, it's something different. So briefly, tell us what made that shift.
We had looked at 3, I think that was back in March, 3 different softwares, CityWorks, iWorks, and InterGov. Yeah. We did look at, again, a few others, totaling about 6 products. This one seems to offer both ease of use for the customer and for staff. The implementation process seems much smoother. They don't go deep into customization, adding additional time to that implementation process, and it does include all the different departments that we were looking to cover.
So this more fits our needs right now, but it doesn't allow us to change much, but we're not asking it to anyways, right?
Right.
Okay.
The mild customization they do have, they've got a 24, 48-hour turnaround on all that process customization or forms. As we make updates to our ordinances, they can incorporate that pretty quickly.
I pretty much had the same question. I remember that we had that presentation. I was going to ask why we changed, because it seemed like staff was really set on having one of those, maybe that InterGov or something.
One of the ones we were looking at were CityWorks.
CityWorks. Okay.
But it has a substantial upfront cost. It is cheaper per year,
right.
But their pricing was based on population, not on actual workload. And their upfront cost was estimated at $100,000 just for the implementation process.
When would it have flipped? Like the price, when would that have been the
equal out?
Is it like 7 years, 10 years?
I would say roughly 6 or 7 years.
Okay. All right. So, anyway.
All right. Do we have a motion on this item? 6B.
I'll move. Go ahead.
I'll make a motion that we approve the interlocal agreement.
Okay.
I'll second.
And we got a motion and a second.
We got a speaker.
Oh.
Oh, okay.
No. Okay. If you'll come to the podium, Mario.
What happens when the internet goes down?
No.
We would have limited access to that, and that's just something that we would have to be ready for in office to work through.
Is that for all of
hybrid or something we can have locally?
Yeah. Mario, I need you to come to the podium.
I just asked what happens when the internet goes down, and then is there a such thing as a hybrid where we can have part of it here, something we can use like a cache version of what we're working on.
Okay. Drew?
This software is cloud-based, so it actually would be housed at their main server. So if, depending upon what part goes down, if it's local here or local there, we would be without service for that time. But there is not a module with this software to be housed on our local computers. It is all cloud-based.
Okay, all right. All right, all in favor of this recommendation, 6B, for the software, if you'd let me know by the raised hand, passes unanimously. Next is, if you will read that 6C for us, Ms. Brown.
Amendments to Chapter 18, Animals of the Code of Ordinances.
All right, Mr. Baroody, would you like to speak to this?
Yeah, so because it's not being presented this way, it says amendments to Chapter 18. We can't really go through with this today because you don't have in front of you an ordinance to read from, but we can make direction. So let me go ahead and make the presentation of why. So at our last council meeting, council took action to adopt the interlocal agreement, which outlines services to be rendered by county for animal control and city for library. At that meeting, we were informed that the inconsistencies between the city and the county animal services codes were eliminated, most notably with regards to a minimum hold time for impounded animals, as well as the restraint restrictions regarding cats specifically. However, this is not really the case, as the two conflicts particulars still remain. Rather than making an unprecedented decision to ignore city ordinances that are currently active on the books, it seems to make sense to remove these codes that are in conflict from the city code of ordinances. So by adopting the interlocal agreement, the city kind of ceded authority of impoundment of animals to the county. Therefore, there really is no valid reason to leave Section 18-37 in the code of ordinances, because it deals only with impoundment, and it also contains some of the conflicts that I've talked about. The interlocal adoption also ceded authority to the county for whether or not restraint is required for cats. So it seems appropriate to remove Section 18-72 from the city codes of ordinances, which simply outlines that cats will not need to be restrained within the city limits. So just for clarification, though, this has nothing to do with what I'm presenting. Well, it has something to do with it. Just for the county court order ruling over this topic, this cat restraint, actually contradicts it kind of within itself. They have one code that says cats aren't required to be restrained, and then the very next code says each unrestrained, unknown, or strayed dog or cat can be impounded. So it's kind of an issue, but it's not one that we're dealing with. So I guess my suggestion here would be to direct staff to draft an ordinance that encompasses this removal of Section 1872 or 1837 and 1872 from our code of ordinances, if that makes sense.
Okay, and the council has voted to come back in 6 months to this. I would suggest, since we're not going to vote on this,
I don't know if 6 months was that was just kind of a number thrown out there. I don't support the 6 months. That's fine if we voted that way, but I'd like to do it as soon as we can. I've heard the 6 months before, but I don't agree with that.
And as far as discussion goes, as far as that goes, to do that is to say we're going to leave ordinances on the books that we are arbitrarily choosing to say ignore those, when we could just as simply say remove those because we are choosing not to use those anymore. That's really what the difference is, and it's a house cleaning thing similar to something we did with telecommunications, Chapter 98, I don't know how many months ago.
then I would say my suggestion would be the city secretary get the text of what you have just said to those who are dealing with this, and at some point they will come back to us.
I would like to ask the city manager what he thinks about just removing these two items now, because we were prepared, and I was prepared to go forward sooner than 6 months myself. Well, not me, but I was hoping we could. Is that feasible to do this sooner than later and
Well, I think that
review the whole ordinance?
The question last time was how long would it take, and I said it could be up to 6 months. So I don't think it necessarily is going to be up to 6 months, but it's not. As I have looked at this after we received it on Wednesday of last week, there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. So, for example, we really aren't contracting away our authority to the county or ceding our authority to the county. They're just a contractor for us to perform a service. So it may be that we still need some of these rules and regulations on our books, and rather than just take them out of our ordinance. So I guess rather than do this piecemeal or kind of half-baked, I'd rather do
the whole thing, and I'd also like to get comments from our partners at the county about impacts to them of any changes to our ordinance. And I'd like to also talk to some of the folks that I've talked to previously about concerns about how animals are cared for and treated and so forth. So I think there's some work to do. It's not as simple as it might appear. And I appreciate the gesture from Councilmember Baroody, and we certainly take all this into account as we look at what changes need to be incorporated, but we need more time with it.
Then
let me make one final comment.
Okay.
And you guys do what you want. Basically, the decision we're making to leave this here essentially says we are picking and choosing ordinances that we're going to choose not to adhere to. And I'm not sure how we explain that to the public that, hey, this ordinance, because if I'm a city resident, I go look in our city charter and we've got a chapter that talks about animals. They won't know that that doesn't apply, that they have to go look for the county ordinance, the interlocal that tells what court order they're supposed to do. And to leave that out there when we know that's the case, this, with all due respect, is a pullout, because impoundment is not a service. That's a service, impoundment. That's a service we have contracted with the county to enforce. So we are confusing our citizens by leaving this out there. Whether we leave it out there 3 months, 6 months, it doesn't matter. We're still confusing them. That's the reason this is up here now. And so you can choose to ignore it, that's okay. But, I mean, it's not okay, but if that's your choice, so be it. But that's what we're doing.
Well, go ahead. I've spoken, so you go ahead.
Well, I don't think if we are asking them to go back and take another look at it, I don't think we're ignoring it. We're just asking to make sure we're doing what we're doing completely before we do it, before we bring it before us.
And could we put something on the website or something that says this is under construction, or this is, about to be revised? So contact the city, the city hall office to make sure if they're using the website to read the charter in the first place, we could put something on there that says this is currently under review.
You can't modify the charter.
I don't mean the charter. I mean if they're using our website to review it.
Mayor, may I comment?
I'm just saying.
Yeah, go ahead.
We really don't get inquiries about animals that much at the city. So I don't really think that's an issue, but I'd ask the city attorney to comment on this idea of having ordinances on our books and then and allegedly an interlocal agreement that's perhaps not consistent about how we enforce our own ordinances.
Is it confusing?
Well, I think Mark covered it really well earlier. This is about regulations, our regulations, and they're about their services. We do need to clean it up. I agree with Councilmember Baroody. I can't remember the last time we had a code violation in municipal court. I don't get calls, about animals other than hunting. So, I'm ready to do whatever you all want to do, within the time constraints that city has. The other thing I'll say too is we've got a number of rules and regulations in the city, and we all, you all probably know this, that we can't be out on every street, every day, enforcing every law, and so that's part of what an agency does, is it picks and chooses and enforces what it can when it can. And so I don't necessarily agree with Councilmember Baroody to say that we have some urgency here or that we're being arbitrary. I do think we need to clean it up, and I'm willing to do that whenever council directs us.
Okay, since we are not voting on this, I suggest that we move ahead.
You have a speaker on this?
Okay, we have a speaker, okay.
Tyra Lux.
Hello, my name is Tyra Thompson Lux, Weston Place in Kerrville. I am not a member of any organization. I am simply a concerned citizen of Kerrville who would like to speak on behalf of the thousands of voiceless and helpless dogs and cats who have been and will be put to death at Kerr County Animal Services, because I believe this is the right thing to do. I believe this is a moral duty of every citizen who has any respect for these animals to step forward and speak up for the welfare of these most humble beings of our society, who have no rights whatsoever. Being silent only permits this ugly, heartbreaking issue to continue. I have been volunteering off and on at Kerrville shelters for nearly 3 years. I know firsthand that these animals would become high-quality pets if they could only be placed in loving homes. I have 3 of them myself. I am not here today to create any animosity with anyone. I am speaking out only to help spread awareness to the many citizens who do not know that animals are being killed by the thousands upon thousands in Kerrville, and that this killing has been the normal practice for too many decades. I would like to urge our city and county leaders to stop this practice. I would like to remind our citizens that there are 3 animal shelters in Kerrville and many animal rescues who have countless quality animals available for adoption. The only thing wrong with these animals is that they are in need of homes. Because they are lost, their owners have moved away or their owners have died and left no one to care for them. For people who prefer to own purebred breeds, there are many of these beautiful animals available. A common misconception among our citizens is that Kerr County Animal Services employees are to blame for the killing. I would like to clarify that this is not true. I have had the pleasure of meeting several, and they are hardworking, friendly, professional people who are doing their jobs according to their job descriptions to support their families. These employees are not responsible for making decisions of these animals' fates. These decisions are made by our elected city and our elected county leaders. Many say that Kerr County Animal Services looks like an uninviting dungeon, both from the highway and within the facility. There are many people who have avoided this place solely due to the gloomy atmosphere. I believe that many more animals would be adopted if the appearance of this facility would change into a more welcoming atmosphere. City and county leaders say they do not have the time or the money to face and address this life and death issue. I would like to encourage our city and county leaders who have never visited Kerr County Animal Services to visit the shelter and these animals whose fate you are deciding, in hopes that your visit might help to positively influence your decisions. I am pleading for citizens of this community and surrounding areas to please join me in considering what we can all accomplish toward changing this dire situation by adopting pets, by volunteering, by spaying and neutering our pets, and very importantly, by contacting each of our elected city council members, our mayor, and our elected county commissioners to make them aware that Kerrville must become a no-kill city because it is the decent, civilized, and responsible decision to make. The more citizens who speak up, the more likely and the sooner we will become a no-kill city. Every single voice counts. The peaceful civil rights activist Mohandas Gandhi said that the greatness of a nation and its moral progress can be judged by the way its animals are treated. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Have you filled out a speaker form?
I did not, but it was on the subject of the.
If you'll fill out a speaker form and then go to the podium.
She can do it after.
Huh?
She can fill it out after. You just go up there and speak your name and address.
All right. Okay. And then be sure to fill out the form later.
Shelley Sandy, 3940 Oak Park Drive in Kerrville. I respectfully want to disagree with something Attorney Mike Hayes said, that the city ordinances have not been being violated. Kerr County Animal Services has operationally, until about a month ago, been operating on a 48-hour hold time in violation of their own court order, which said 72 hours. So, and I believe there were some things in the city ordinances that also referred to 72 hours. So just wanted to offer that up. Thank you.
And to that point, that's the jackpot that I'm talking about.
Wait, would you speak up?
To that point, that's the jackpot that I'm talking about with the sense of urgency about this, is simply because if we leave things status quo right now, then a citizen of Kerrville who has an animal, the county animal services picks up that animal. They are not obligated to hold it any longer than 48 hours. If there's a capacity issue, they hold it 48. but I'm a city citizen. I go look up my charter, and it says that we as council people are going to defend the ordinances that we have on the books. And they say that if it's a vaccinated animal, minimum hold time 72 business hours. We now have a conflict with citizens going to complain to us, not just you, they're going to complain to us and say, why aren't you defending the ordinance? So that's the reason there's an urgency to clean it up right now.
Okay, but we don't have something we can vote on tonight.
No, my direction was to see if we understand the urgency and give direction to bring it at the next meeting. It's a simple task to create the ordinance.
So the staff will work on this and bring it back to us soon. Okay? All right. Okay.
Did you make a motion to?
No, because
No, we don't have anything to vote on.
I'll ride herd on it.
Okay. 6D, amendment to the city's purchasing policy. Ms. Brown, would you read that for us?
Amendment to the city's purchasing policy to prohibit award of a contract to any person or entity who is being investigated for or has been convicted of a felony.
All right. Let's start with Mr. Vogel, and we'll come across.
Well, this is kind of mine on here, so if I could present it first, that would be
probably
useful.
Okay.
So basically, this is about adding in an extra section, if you will, or an extra item to our purchasing policy. So we have sections already in the purchasing policy. It's 11.1 called Ethics Requirements, City Policies. Starts out by stating, currently, the city demands the highest ethical standards of conduct from its employees and from vendors or contractors dealing with the city. And then it lists some. And so I went and looked at for some guidelines of what someone might put in there, and the Procurement Guide of Texas provides examples of recommended contract clauses, not what you'd put in your policy necessarily, but one of which is the following. It says, respondent represents that neither respondent nor any of its employees, agents, or representatives, including any subcontractors or employees, agents, or representatives as such, have been convicted of a felony criminal offense, or that if such a conviction has occurred, respondent has fully advised agency in writing of that. So there's obviously a
conviction, though.
It is. That's correct.
Okay.
And so there's obviously a concern about felonies. We have the same sort of thing, I will assume. I don't know if this city does, but employment criteria within a lot of municipalities, a lot of jobs, prohibits felony convictions for prospective new hires. So it would seem appropriate the city might consider something of this nature. Now, when involving, taxpayer support for businesses, felony backgrounds. Now, to what Ms. Eagerman's pointing out about the conviction, that's correct that those are convictions. They're also only suggestions. They aren't requirements that are made by anybody. So as far as under investigation, it seems a little bit counterintuitive. I don't know. Ludicrous was the word I was about to say, so I'll just say it. To think that you would, if you go to the step of saying you don't want to deal with somebody who's convicted, that you might want to put a pause on dealing with someone who's under investigation, at least until after the investigation has been completed. It's not a black mark on them forever. It's a hold pattern, if you will. Because how silly would you look if you know they're under investigation and they end up being convicted and you've made that decision. So that's the reason I added that in there as far as under investigation. To do otherwise seems to say that we are okay with it, and I wouldn't be okay with that using taxpayer dollars. So before someone tries to call the question, I'll go ahead and make the motion that is the question, that we edit the purchasing policy by adding a section 11.1F that says, I actually modified a little bit from the words in what I presented, but the city will not enter into a contract or funding agreement with any vendor to cover its principals, investors, employees, agents, including subcontractors, which has been previously convicted or is at the time of award under investigation for a felony.
And I just have some comments. I know you just made a motion, I think, but,
Mhm.
you know, I would like to know more about what this investigation cloud would be. I mean, I envisioned two competing companies going to bid, and one accuses the other of some type of fraudulent activity, and they become under investigation, and guess what? They're knocked out of the running for the bid itself. It's just a scenario. So what I guess I'm saying is being under investigation could be an officer, it could be a subcontractor, it could be a million other things, and I think I'd like to understand a more clear definition of investigation before I put it in our policies, so, for procurement.
And
Go ahead.
I have to second that. I'm uncomfortable at this point. I need more information. I'm not saying that this is not something we should do, but I need some more understanding before I'm ready to vote.
Okay, would you be able to put that into a question, like what type of information you wanted?
What type? Who asks for it?
I'm actually asking Ms. Eichner
Yeah.
because she's the one who wants more information.
I just need a better understanding for myself of the ramifications and exactly how this would all look. I just don't feel like I'm ready to make an educated vote on this.
Mr. Vogel.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, you're seconding Mr. Baroody's motion, okay. And the motion is the adoption of this.
Is adding a new section to the purchasing policy, 11.1F,
11.1F.
under ethics,
Okay.
and I can present that.
Okay. All in favor of Mr. Baroody's motion, if you'd let it be known by the raised hand. All right. Okay. The motion does not carry.
All opposed?
I'm sorry. All opposed, yeah. Okay. The motion does not carry.
Can we have a speaker to that, or no?
Do we have a speaker?
Did you want to say
We do have a
something?
speaker, yes.
No need to speak at this time.
Okay, all right, okay. Yeah, Mr. Siegman? Oh, come, have you filled out a form? Okay, come to the podium and then fill it out.
Mike Kerrville, 4000 Comanche Trace Drive, Kerrville, Texas. I don't disagree with, excuse me, the philosophy of what George is presenting, but has there been any consultation with the city attorney about what the ramifications are of the city arbitrarily saying, you know, we're not going to do business with you because something's happened in the past? Someone has done something in the past, they've been convicted of something, they've served their time, and they're an upstanding, they have a business that is licensed to do business in the state of Texas, even in the city of Kerrville. And we choose, because of something that happened in the past, not to do business. Is that somewhat a violation of their civil rights? I'm not asking you, but do you believe?
No, you asked me if there's been consultation. So to answer that, I have not consulted with the city attorney here. I have consulted with other attorneys at other municipalities, not attorneys of cities, but I've consulted with attorneys and I've consulted with some cities who have done similar steps. And to answer your point, you're right that there are, anytime you do a policy like this, you're talking about addressing someone's past. But as far as our city attorney goes, I know that it's in his contract that he gets removed under that. So the felony line, albeit is arbitrarily low these days, to be honest with you, right? But that line gets used quite a bit in employment and in contracts. So I can't tell you that there isn't a civil rights case that has won based on that, but I can tell you it's a pretty widespread policy.
So you bring up a very good point, and the felony bar is very low. And, you know, 30 years ago, someone was convicted of drug possession, or they were convicted of stealing a bicycle or whatever it was, and it became a felony.
Mm-hmm.
And so whatever they were charged with, whatever they had to do, probation, whatever it was, that's done. Okay.
Right.
They've established a business that is an upstanding business in the state of Texas, in the city of Kerrville. Do business with everybody in town, and they come to the city, and the city says, we're not going to do business with you because you've been convicted of a felony in the past.
Okay.
Does that seem like the right thing to do to you? Can you pick and choose, or if you do it to one person, you do it to everybody?
No.
Does that seem like a good
if
policy for the city?
If I pick or choose, I think that's a bad policy.
Okay, but does that seem like a good policy to you to punish someone for something that happened 30 years ago in their life? I'm asking you, does that seem like a good policy to you?
As a procurement, using other people's money, yes. As my own personal thing, if it was my own business, maybe not. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about being stewards of someone else's money.
Understand that.
Especially, you laid out an example of a drug past. What if that example had to do with corruption or, say, bribery? What would you do with that? To me, that plays a bigger role. And so to make it a blanket statement instead of singling out is a lot simpler. I would propose that taking the recommendation from the Texas procurement thing as far as putting something in there is the right thing to do. Do I think it's necessarily right or moral to never give someone a second chance? No. But I wouldn't put a child molester as a teacher. I would put a child molester as a job, but I wouldn't. There's certain jobs I wouldn't.
Understand
so
what you're saying,
that's
but we're
basically where
talking
it's
about
going.
two different things. We're not talking about the same thing. And you're going as far from the city standpoint as saying, if you're being investigated for something, we're not going to do business with you. This might be your one chance to do business with the city, but since you're under investigation for something, which means you're not guilty, you know.
Oh, I understand being not guilty. All right, so you don't have to explain that to me, but you're right. And the choice is being made here. The choice isn't being made. The motion's being made here to do that. And do I think it's the right thing to do? I absolutely do. In taxpayer money, to apply the same standards that we would apply to the employees to apply to the contractors. That's just my take. You don't have to agree with that.
And George, we just simply said we need more time and more information on this issue.
Okay, let me
before
say,
we're gonna agree on it.
Mr. Harrison is going to speak, but we've already voted on this, and we need to move on. Mr. Harrison.
I just had a couple, John Harrison, 2911 Dry Hollow, I just had a couple of comments. I find it astounding that this is put in the procurement policy. It follows 5 bullet points. The lead-in statement in that policy is city employees engaged in purchasing must comply with the following ethical standards. And then we insert this statement. I don't see how that fits because it's not applies to city employees at all. So if it goes, I think you ought to find some place else to put it in your policy. Second point, I'm astounded that this body would even consider not doing business with someone who has been accused of a felony or being investigated for a felony. Folks, we all can be being investigated right now for a felony. I mean, and we don't know it. How are you going to police that? I can understand convictions. We lose our right to vote if we're convicted of a felony. But being investigated for a felony, not even indicted, we wouldn't even have a Texas State Attorney General right now if we had that kind of a policy. I would say if you're being investigated for a felony or maybe even a misdemeanor, maybe you shouldn't be sitting at this dais. I don't know. I don't think that's right. But this investigation is ludicrous to me. I would hope, and I'm glad you voted it down, but I would hope you wouldn't consider that kind of thing in the future. Thank you very much.
Just to answer him, the investigation, just keep in mind, it's not if you've ever been investigated, it's if you're currently being investigated. And there's a slight difference there. And as far as the placement of it in the procurement policy ethics right there, yes, you took out the second sentence of that lead in. The first sentence talks about vendors. You're right, though. You can add another section. It wouldn't matter to me. It's just the bottom line is in the procurement policy or purchasing policy. I wasn't caring about where it was placed. That would have been no big deal.
Okay, one item before we go to 7A, financial update. Who has the authority to turn the air conditioning off? Please. Okay. I think we're trying to match the outside temperature. Okay.
I think that's my fault. I think I asked for it to be cooler.
Okay, financial update. Ms. Brown, would you read that agenda item into the record?
Financial updates for the month ending 30th, 2018.
Okay. I would like to give y'all a brief update on how we ended the year. So our fiscal year ended on 9/30/2018. Our annual audit is going on right now. So these numbers that I'm presenting, just wanted to make sure you understood that they are not audited yet. They're in the process of being audited. And also just make sure you understand, this is from an accounting perspective, but the expenditures here, we're looking at them on a cash basis because that's how we budget. When you see them reported in the annual financial report, they're reported under a different basis, so that changes things. But I'm happy to go into details with anyone individually if you would like to go through that. On the general fund, I wanted to highlight that the revenues for the year, $27.3 million, expenditures of $27.4 million. On the revenue side of things, we ended up $554,000 better than budget for the year, so significantly better than budget. There was a couple of things that I wanted to point out. The first is the ambulance supplement payment that we've been talking about for a while. We actually put it in our 2019 budget. We thought that we would receive it in 2019, and it was paid to us earlier than we expected. So it's good news that we received that payment, but we received it in the 2018 year at the very end rather than in 2019. We also had a good year in parks. They ended the year $79,000 better than budget on the revenue side, primarily due to high occupancies at Kerrville Shriner Park. We also ended the year $107,000 better than budget in the permits and fees section, primarily due to building permits. And we also did better than expected with our interest income. We've had rising interest rates, and we've had some proactive investment management that helped us achieve that. A quick mention to sales tax, because we've been talking about sales tax all year. So sales tax, we ended up the year $61,000 short of budget, which is better than some of the scenarios that we discussed. So for the year, we were up 2.6% compared to 2017. So this puts us in a scenario that where we actually ended 2018, our 2019 budget is a projection of being up 2.2% on sales tax. So far, we're starting out the year flat. We've received sales tax in October and November, and we're up 0.8%, so less than 1%. So we're flat so far. We'll get into that more as we start looking at individual months in 2019, but just a preview there. On the general fund expenditure side, we ended up better than budget, primarily due to the staffing vacancies that we've been discussing during the year. And you will note that we did also have a big jump in expenditures in September that relates to the $900,000 budget transfer that y'all approved last month. Moving on to the water and sewer side, we ended with revenues of $12.5 million and expenditures of $11.6. Looking at some of the primary items there, water sales actually ended up a little under budget for the year, which we've been trending over budget for the entire year, and then September came, and yes, and we're happy to get the rain, but we ended the year under budget on water revenues because of that. Sewer revenues continued under budget as we've been looking at throughout the year. It looks like it's the conservation during the sewer averaging period on the residential side that was causing that. We did have some other revenue related to debt refinancing, and we also had a reduced expenditures related to reduced debt service because of the refinancing that we did in December of 2017, and it was not originally budgeted. So some of those things came into play there. Moving on to the golf fund. Golf ended the year with a net positive of $195,000. But one thing to note, that does include a transfer in from the general fund of $280,000. Green fees for the year were basically flat with 2017. They were down $3,600 from where they were in 2017, so pretty much flat. And then on the hotel occupancy tax fund, we ended the year better than budget and up a strong 10% from 2017 to 2018 on hotel occupancy tax revenue. So we continue to see strong results there. And those are the highlights. We will be coming back in February with our actual audited annual financial report, but those are the highlights as of today. Any questions?
I have one question. Looking back at last year, as you look at the numbers, is there anything that particularly jumps out at you about we need to pay attention to this year, or may even need to go back in and change the budget some?
Yeah, that's a good question. A couple of things. I can always come up with a couple of things I'm worried about. So the ambulance supplement program, we are going to apply for that again in 2019, and we're hopeful that the state will continue funding it. We're hopeful that the timing will be similar to this year, but we did have a large amount budgeted in 2019, and we actually got that in 2018. So, I mean, you know, bottom line, over the 2 years, we still got the money, but it came in a different year than where it's budgeted. So, so there's that. Sales taxes, you know, that's just always a volatile one, and it's such a large revenue source for us that we'll for sure continue to watch that closely. And then, you know, on the water and sewer side, certainly the water sales and sewer sales are just also very volatile, and so weather dependent. That you know, that will be something that we'll keep you updated on a monthly basis.
Do you think the floods, like that 2-week, 3-week period, could have affected the sales tax? Probably. People weren't, you know, focused on doing anything but just evacuating, cleaning up, preparing, whatever. I mean, could you blame it on that?
It is possible. There's a few things to note on that. So sales tax is received 2 months after it's paid. So if we're talking about like flooding in September, that would be October, November before we see that. On the flip side, you know, it could mean that there's more expenditures at home repair stores if people need to clean things up. So it's a little too soon to tell with that. But definitely in the past, when we've seen some, you know, natural disaster kind of things, it's actually increased sales tax because of the cleanup and repair related to it.
In the future, yeah.
Any other questions, Ms. Dozier?
Well, I met the auditors yesterday, and they looked very healthy and very studious, but they did do this, so I was okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
One note on the sales tax, and I'm not trying to rub this in with Fredericksburg, but we still receive about twice the sales tax that Fredericksburg does, and that continues to interest me.
What's their population?
Well, population has something to do, but it also has to do with the nature of manufacturing operations that are here, Lowe's, Home Depot, etc. All right. Flood damage report, Mr. Hoppy?
Yes, sir. We had an opportunity 2 weeks ago to...
Mr. I'm sorry, can I read this?
Sure.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, okay, so go ahead.
Report on status of flood damage assessment at reused line bridge structure located near Loop 534 bridge.
Okay, we had an opportunity a couple weeks ago to report right after the flooding had begun to recede, and we were beginning to provide some damage assessment at that time. Wanted to bring back this item to you now here a couple weeks later after we've had some further progress to see what all the actions were on the ground, particularly with the reuse line bridge, which was probably the piece of infrastructure that the city received the most damage to. So as you recall from the presentation at that time, the regional flooding event occurred really from about October 13th through the 23rd, through the full recession of those waters. You can see this is looking down on the 534 bridge. Essentially the footbridge and the reuse line bridge are completely covered in the floodwaters there. You can see these are some of the pictures that were taken on October 22nd, right before your council meeting. You can see some of the debris that are lodged up onto the structure. some of the infrastructure that is damaged and in the water, some of the exposed pylons, and then certainly this is the G Street Bridge, but you can see some of the scale of debris that was coming down the river in various sections. We mentioned to you at that time we were looking to assistance from Kerrville Fire Department in possibly deploying the rescue dive team. We were able to accomplish that on October 26th and appreciated them taking a training opportunity to get in the water, beginning to get frigid at that point and quite murky still, and just give us some eyes underwater and being able to assess where infrastructure could potentially be located and really, what we might be faced with. Subsequent to that, we did have a clearing of the floodwaters and were able to deploy an aerial drone. You can see pretty clearly some of the infrastructure there, particularly along that north bank of the channel. You get some pretty good photos through there. And some of the infrastructure quite a ways down, about 100 yards down from the actual originally constructed area. So the status over the last 2 weeks, all parties, contractor, subcontractor, insurance companies, design engineer have been able to visit the site, assess the damages, take some initial pictures and site readings. FEMA will actually be on site tomorrow. They'll be coming into Kerrville to talk with both the city and the county and to assess not just damages at this location, but really from the entirety of the event and talk about what occurred and what all it took to for the staff to get those back in place and what kind of expenditures were necessary. Next steps, we are in the process of developing an agreed upon protocol for a forensic deconstruction of the site and the itemization and inventory of the infrastructure as well as the storage. That way all parties involved can test those materials and really determine, are there design issues, are there acts of God that were involved, are there construction issues that were involved. Until we really deconstruct that and are able to do some independent testing on that, we won't have those answers. So that is the next step. Attorneys have worked through developing, in conjunction with the engineers, the protocols for how that will occur, and we are hoping that that will be able to be deployed here in the very near future. But certainly did not want to spoil the site, as we move forward. And we are exploring multiple options for the redesign and rebuild of that effort. And so we're looking at that with our engineers at this time. Be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions?
I've got a couple, Mayor.
Okay.
The question I keep hearing is, why did we build the lines where they are and not put them on the lower footbridge? And the other question is, how are we servicing the customers that those were servicing?
Mm-hmm. As you may recall, in the original design, the footbridge was intended to be removed. And to answer your question, we haven't had a whole lot of need over the September-October months because the irrigation demand has been pretty low given the high water that we've had. But right now, we had two trunk lines that were designed crossing the river within the location. One was an existing line that was on the actual TxDOT 534 bridge, and that was being switched in use. And so we are continuing to utilize that as a redundant feature right now.
Is that all affluent, or is that potable water and affluent, or?
We have multiple lines across that. Yes, sir.
So the redundant lines are on the Loop 534 bridge?
Correct.
Well, they're at 173 as well.
Okay, but the river crossing is essentially Loop 534 bridge, right?
It's all bridge.
Yes, we have multiple lines crossing the river at multiple locations, but in that general vicinity, we have lines that are attached to the 534 bridge. Yes, sir.
And just to clarify as well, because I had a question early on about why weren't these lines put up on 534 bridge, and I believe TxDOT didn't deem the bridge safe enough to do that. Is that correct?
That's right. They have some protocols, pretty strenuous protocols for hanging those on. The existing lines that are on there were done some number of decades ago,
Right.
And so it's a pretty lengthy process to get those in place. Bottom line, we basically would have had to redesign and rebuild the entirety of the 534 bridge. Yeah.
Just
So,
have
but
people
it
asking
is
that,
something
so.
we're assessing right now. to see the full scope of what that might entail.
Yeah, because replacing it every couple of years is probably not a good idea, right?
That's right. We certainly don't want to be replacing infrastructure.
Mayor,
Right,
we have a speaker.
Okay.
Peggy McKay.
Peggy McKay, P.O. Box 291464, Kerrville.
Ms. McKay, if you'll use your address, please.
Will that also be true of business owners who give their business addresses?
Yes,
Okay, 103 Westchester, Kerrville. My question is, the design of these lines, after talking to several engineers, the design of these lines was faulty, which comments in the city were numerous, that the first flood would take those lines out, and that's exactly what happened. And this was not like the major floods that we've had before. My concern is, who will be held responsible? Will the citizens incur any costs because of the loss of the lines? And hopefully this new design will not be similar to what we've had, because it's been proven to be faulty. So my question's primarily, who takes the responsibility and who incurs the cost of replacement?
Thank you. Okay, there is no action required on this item. We move to items for future agendas. Council persons, any items you want to mention? Okay. Do we need an executive session? No. All right. Then there's no further word.
I move that we adjourn.
We are adjourned at 7:56:52.
I second.
Wait, okay, we got a motion second. We're all right. We're all right. Okay, thank you. Thank you.